vote Trump. If you want to restore law and order in this country, vote Trump. If you want to defeat the deep state, vote Trump.
Is the deep state real?
Is the deep state real?
The reason JFK kept his date in Georgetown that night was because this is where power in Washington was. On the other side of town from the Capitol building, the seat of American democracy. The decisions were being made here by unelected men who had an immense amount of secret power.
Unelected deep state operatives who defy the voters to push their own secret agendas.
You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. So even for a practical, supposedly hard-nosed businessman, he's being really dumb to do this.
As far as I know, we don't engage in assassinations and kidnappings and things of that kind.
I do think there has to be serious questions raised about some of the foreign policy blunders that this country has had over the last 20 to 25 years.
There's some truth in the idea that there is an ongoing group of people who continue the work of government as administrations come and go. Is it possible for these entities to go rogue? Absolutely.
Was the agency involved in the kind of domestic surveillance that has been portrayed in the news reports?
My feeling is that it has not.
And so Roosevelt now has a license, more of a license to do what he wants. And one of the first things he does is consult with a man named Bill Donovan.
Wild Bill, a corporate Wall Street lawyer who was obsessed with the power of intelligence.
Donovan had very strong opinions, and he said, you need a wartime intelligence service. You're going to war.
Wild Bill Donovan would be in charge of the Office of Strategic Services, or OSS, a centralized intelligence agency that would be given immense power to do whatever it took to keep our people safe and to keep our team on top. This was the birth of modern intelligence, a euphemism for spying and lying and cheating and deceiving and sneaking and breaking, coercing, dividing, and conquering. No idea was too crazy for the OSS during this time. Like, one OSS psychologist had this idea that Hitler could be demoralized if they just showed him a vast quantity of porn.
Paramilitary operations.
Strapping explosives to a bunch of bats and letting them loose over Tokyo.
Guys skiing into Nazi-occupied Norway.
Making fake companies, recruiting off Wall Street from all of his old colleagues, bringing in bankers and movie directors, fake radio stations, anything to demoralize, divide, or confuse the enemy.
The OSS is the first intelligence agency that the United States ever has.
Oh, and one of Wild Bill's favorite things to do was to have parties at his house.
Hi! Are we the first ones here?
It's the big night.
The forces of Germany have surrendered to the United Nations.
What do we do with the OSS now that we're at peace? And Truman says, we don't want to risk having an American Gestapo.
A political police.
His meaning, especially in the context of having just defeated the Nazis, was, that's what led our enemy astray. They had a secret intelligence agency, the Gestapo, which wound up enforcing political norms and enforcing tyranny. And we don't want to risk that.
Here's Harry Truman doing the right thing and signing a piece of paper that says that the OSS can no longer exist. I mean, is it significant that all these guys live 4 blocks from each other in Georgetown?
Yeah, it's very significant because they're the product of this wartime culture.
This is one party that just has to turn out right.
Here is target number 1 for the Reds. And who's in the bullseye? You are.
So there was a brief moment after World War II when the Cold War didn't exist. We were at peace. But then, almost immediately, tension started to rise between these two great empires that had been allies to defeat the Nazis, but were now skeptical of each other. And senators were suddenly declaring that it was impossible to know where war begins and where it ends.
The Soviet Union and its agents have destroyed the independence and democratic character
of a whole series of nations in Eastern and Central Europe.
And this is when all the intel people that had run the OSS, many of them who lived in Georgetown, by the way, start calling for the resurrection of the OSS, a centralized intelligence agency that we can use to fight this new global war with the Soviet Union. But no, say a bunch of other lawmakers, the Constitution wasn't designed for us to put so much power in the hands of men who are doing secret things. Doing this will result in a police state run by power-grabbing bureaucrats. Too much power to military leaders and their insatiable appetite for more money, for more men, and more power, whatever the cost to democracy.
Truman's mind changed. And what changed Truman's mind was the growing confrontation with the Soviet Union.
And soon the papers were signed and a new agency was formed, the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA.
When Truman signs the National Security Act, he says, we have to be careful that we don't have an American Gestapo. So that thought is still on his mind.
The CIA was the big, shiny new weapon of the United States in the Cold War. And their mission was to, quote, gain and distribute intelligence and to perform, quote, other functions and duties related to intelligence affecting national security. What does that mean?
Everybody knew what that language meant. Everybody knew that was, and we just weren't going to talk about it because we didn't want to write it down on paper.
Like, what do they do with this vague mandate of national security?
Oh boy, they go to town. Operation Paperclip, 1945 to 1959. The Americans wanted to get those Nazi rocket scientists on their side so that they could develop their own rocket capacity. James Angleton, for example, protects a general under Hitler.
CIA gets involved in the Italian
elections, 1948. Puts his thumb on the Italian democracy and makes sure that U.S. allies win.
Operation Ajax, coup in Iran, 1953.
The CIA and the MI6 organize a coup to overthrow the democratically elected government.
Now that we encourage the Shah to take that action, I will not deny.
CIA coup Guatemala, 1954. Bananas, of course, bananas.
Again, democratically elected government, reformists wanted to engage in land reform, and the CIA overthrows it, really at the behest of the United Fruit Company.
CIA is now helping American corporations.
The influence of American corporations on the CIA actions is unmistakable. Alan Dulles was on the board of directors. Howard Hunt, Birch O'Neill, David Phillips, CIA coup in Congo, early 1960s, CIA coup in Chile, 1973.
Good luck, Vegas.
The assassination operation against General Schneider in 1970 is coordinated with Kissinger's office.
Thank you. Nice to see you all.
Mind control experiments, MK Ultra.
In 1950, the CIA launches a massive program to develop means of controlling people's minds. Some 40 U.S. academic institutions were involved in this kind of
LSD
research.
to people without their permission.
Can we develop a truth serum, dosing somebody with LSD 60 times in a week? NSA's Operation Shamrock, electronic surveillance, 1945 to 1975. The first warrantless wiretapping.
Oh God, Bay of Pigs, nightmare.
There were hundreds of CIA assassination plots.
Operation Phoenix.
Eventually, Bill Colby, who was later director, admitted that they had killed 20,000 people.
Operation Mockingbird, COINTELPRO, Operation Chaos, Watergate, Jim Critchfield, Frank Wiesner, James Angleton, Roosevelt, John Foster Corey.
CIA coup in Indonesia, CIA coup in Greece, CIA involvement in the Guatemalan Civil War. It was a CIA crime spree for 20 years. There's no other way to describe it.
So by the 1970s, the CIA is this powerful, well-funded machine of intelligence that is doing a lot of secret things all around the world. They start blackmailing lawmakers to scare them away from investigating them and reining them in.
These agencies had harmful personal information on lots of people. When I was doing my Angleton book, a guy told me one day when he went to meet Angleton, Angleton quoted back to him what he had said to his wife in bed the night before. They had this capacity, and people knew that they had this capacity. You know, the Kennedys knew that J. Edgar Hoover had information about his affairs with various women.
Happy birthday, Mr. President.
This kind of knowledge that they had, Angleton and Hoover were masters at using those kind of secrets as leverage. Kennedy had this thing hanging over his head, and he knew Hoover, had that on him. And so He couldn't fire Hoover.
The Church Committee made a few things clear. Number one, that indeed a group of unelected government employees used immense power and resources of the United States government to pursue programs that were illegal, unethical, and generally out of line with American values and norms. And they did it in secret, outside of any sort of accountability, partly because the U.S. Congress wanted to give them money and turn a blind eye.
I can recall members of Congress who recoiled from responsibility of knowing what was happening. Members of Congress who said, "Don't tell me, I don't want to know."
When Dulles wanted to get approval for the CIA budget, all he had to do was take a top-line number to the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, and he would say, "This is what we want for this year." And the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee would say, "Okay, that's what you've got, and please don't tell us anything about what you're doing with it." And so there was no internal challenge to this world of CIA people.
Even within the deep state, there are people who are doing things for altruistic and good reasons, and then there are people who are doing things for their own selfish or bad reasons, and exactly how many are in each category is sort of impossible to delineate.
I got sucked in when I should have known better, and where many other more intelligent, sophisticated people got sucked in other areas.
So after the Church Committee, all kinds of new oversight regulations come in. There's new committees formed, there's new regulations, and suddenly the intelligence community now finally has some kind of oversight. The deep state was reined in. Now, they did fight back. Church was undermined and intimidated by these agencies.
One of you is about to be elected the leader of the single most powerful nation in the world. Have you formed any guiding principles for exercising this enormous power?
When it comes to foreign policy, that'll be my guiding question. Is it in our nation's interests? Peace in the Middle East is in our nation's interests. Having a hemisphere that is free for trade.
And the result is that when the most powerful man in the world arrives to the most powerful house in the world, promising to rein all of this in, to rein in the excesses, he actually finds that he can't. He's not able to change much of it. Instead, he sits there and watches much of the things that he critiqued grow under his watch. The thing that he's supposed to control, he finds he doesn't have that much control over.
These targeted strikes against Al-Qaeda terrorists are indeed ethical and just.
Secrets keep us safe, but secrets also degrade this delicate thing that we have called democracy and accountability. That is, until we save ourselves from their everlasting, seductive pull.
The United States must not adopt the tactics of the enemy. Means are as important as ends. Crisis makes it tempting to ignore the wise restraints that make men free.